Hello and welcome to Container Gardening with Native Plants, 10 Plants for Urban Spaces. I'm Lexi from Moraine Native Plant Community, and we've got a very special presentation for you this evening. We're going to be talking about those tiny spaces that you'd like to fill with native plants, but maybe you didn't know how to get started. Or maybe you've got a garden and you've got a patio and you want to fill it with even more pots and, put your native plants in there. So to get us started, Kathy is going to introduce our special guest presenter.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Yes, we are very excited about our special guest that we're having tonight. We are so lucky to have found, his name is Jeremie Fant, and we're so lucky that he is with us tonight because the number one question, I really think it's like the number one question, right, Lexi, that we are asked on a regular basis is what native plants can I grow in a container? Because a lot of people live in apartments and condos and townhomes, and they have a balcony or a patio. And just because you don't have land that you can plant in, Jeremie is going to show us tonight that you can still help the environment, that you can still plant native plants, and we can all be part of this effort to improve our local ecosystem. So this is really exciting because we just get asked this question so much, and I don't have a lot of experience trying this with native plants. And every year Lexi and I say, we're going to try more native plants in containers this year, and then we get overwhelmed with everything else and we don't do it. So we found somebody who did. And before I introduce this special guest, I'm going to ask everybody, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already and like this video. It really helps out our channel and it helps us get this important information out to more and more people so they can all help us plant native and restore our environment. So our special guest, Jeremie Fant, is a conservation scientist at the Chicago Botanic Garden. He is also an adjunct professor in biological sciences at Northwestern University. Jeremie's research interests include rare and threatened species, gene flow and pollination, restoration genetics, and conservation of genetic diversity. Let's all welcome and thank you for joining us, Jeremie. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks, Kathy and Lexi, and I appreciate the opportunity to present this. I am a scientist, and so I am used to giving presentations, but I'm trying to keep this one sort of a relaxed and friendly presentation. So I'll try and keep it very laissez-faire as best I can. I'm kind of excited by how excited other people are by this topic. As I was telling Kathy and Lexi before, I just did this because I'm a plant nerd and I had a condo with no garden space and I just wanted to give it a try. I love native plants. The word native has changed for me depending on where I've lived in the world, but I always like what's local. I always think local is best. And so when I started this, I didn't have a lot of guidance on what I could do, but I did have a horticultural degree and I was naive enough and hopeful enough that I would give it a go. So this is my journey on this, and hopefully encourages other of you to also take the journey. It was fun, and I highly encourage people to consider this sort of thing as well. So we're going to start. So I really wanted to create a space in my balcony that could be a little bit greener, a little bit more fun. I love greenery. I love plants. I love being around plants. And I think even those people who say they don't, there's a lot of studies to show how calming and how relaxing plants are, and native plants maybe more so. And so I want to create that space for myself, even if it was just in a small area. And so that's what I did with my space. And now I have, for the past 15, 16 years, this nice green space outside, which I enjoy often, and so does my dog. So it's a great space. So where did it all start? Well, in 2008, I bought a condo in the city, the Wicker Park area. We did have a lot of lists of, like many people, of what we would love to have. Green space was one of them, but we couldn't afford green space in the city, so we had to make do with a balcony. And so my balcony is 5 by 10, which is a fairly decent size and much larger than many people. So I knew I had space to try something out. I also knew that I was going to be in an area that's not much green space, not many parks. So to me, it was even more important that, you know, I had something green around me and something. So that's kind of where I started, blank slate, not much greenery, neighborhood, you know, was fairly urban. And so I thought I'd give it a go. So what was I trying to do? So I wasn't looking to do a showy bed of flowers. I do love a good display of flowers. I'm a horticulturalist by training, and nothing is more pretty than just a beautiful assortment of flowering plants. But having lived in the Midwest, I come to appreciate prairies for their beauty and the wildflowers. These scenes are just two examples. Sorry, my dog. Two examples of plants that, you know, you would see, or landscapes that you would see in and around Illinois that really sort of inspire me and make me think that I too can have a wildflower garden on my own, in my own space. The other thing I show this picture is it's very short. You know, I know the tall grass prairies of Illinois can reach up to 8 feet tall. I definitely don't want plants that are 8 feet tall on my balcony. This sort of landscape of sort of this wildflower bed of very low growing wildflowers was really where I want to start. I knew that I had to consider some things when I was considering. So most of what I read at that point was that, you know, plants in pots you had to bring inside. That was not going to happen. The pots were going to be too big. There's no way I could bring plots inside. I didn't have room enough. And so I had to make sure that whatever I did was able to handle the sort of outdoor conditions. So I knew that in Illinois, in Chicago, I'm going to have, my balcony is going to be hot and dry. It's going to be cold. And the plants that I love the most have the deepest roots that you can possibly find. So I knew that that meant that there were some conditions I had to meet in order to make sure I created a healthy ecosystem in my backyard. At this point, I really struggled to find any information at all. I didn't know what I could and couldn't do. I didn't know what I could and couldn't try. I struggled really to find any sort of good guidance. But as I said in the beginning, I was naive enough and eager enough that I thought, what could I lose? You know, at worst, a bit of my time. I have a bit of fun. It could be a complete failure. I was ready to plant new natives every year if they died every year, but I thought I'd give it a go and see what happens. To start off with, in 2008, I decided when I bought, first thing I did was buy some pots. I knew I needed to choose containers that could handle the outdoor conditions in Chicago. I think pot selection is a big one. I can tell you what I tried. I don't necessarily say that these are the best pots or only pots you should do, but given the depth of roots, given what I knew about the cold, I knew that I needed material that can handle cold, that wasn't going to fray and break after a couple of years. I knew that roots were going to be deep, so I tried my best to choose pots that were deep. I knew that I wanted to have some sort of protection for the pots so that the roots were isolated. Pots are very stressed in winter conditions. In the prairie, the soils are deep and they're insulated from the cold. But a pot has no insulation, so the roots were going to be exposed. So I chose fiberglass pots. I put foam insulation in them, and I tried to get the deepest pots that seemed reasonable for my space. The next thing I was interested in is the soil I was going to use. I think I got a bit nerdy and maybe overthought this a little bit, but I do know that in Illinois, diversity is really dictated by the soil you have. So the prairie in the wet soil is very different to the prairie in dry soils. And the species that you choose have strong preferences either end of that spectrum. So I decided I want to try some mixture of soil types just to increase the diversity of plants I could try. Regular soil seems to be the best, and I think regular potting mix that you can buy, not soil, I should say potting mix, is probably the best choice. To make it a little dry, I did add some vermiculite to some of the soils to make it a little drier, and sometimes perlite or sand to make it really dry. And in some cases, I add peat to make it wet. So I have 4 pots. One I call my wetlands, which has got a lot of peat in it. One I call my sand prairie, which has got a little bit of sand in it. I have another one which is dry, which has vermiculite and a bit of rubber. And then I have just the regular potting soil, which is my woodland plants. And so, again, I think this is over nerdy. I don't think you need to go to this level. I think regular soil for most people will be fine. But you can play with it if you're looking for some special plants that you love.
Jeremie, I just
Interest,
have a quick question on the soil.
yeah.
Is there any brand of soil that you prefer? Like, would you tell people to avoid something with a lot of fertilizers and have, less nutrients in the soil?
No, I think garden mix soil with fertilizer is not a bad idea to get it started. Um, I would avoid sort of soil that's more like true soil because it becomes very heavy. So potting soil, garden potting soil is designed for pots. And so I think that's a good thing to think about. It actually is designed for being in a pot and give the conditions roots need inside a pot. And so actually this leads into my next point here really well, because at the same time that I was starting my experiments, the Chicago Botanic Gardens was evaluating plants on the green roofs at their establishment. And so we have some great green roofs with different plants we tried. The soil in that is artificial. It's just a clay matrix. It's very rocky. They couldn't put heavy soil on the roof. And so this made me feel better. It realizes that soil, it's really about what is suitable for growing on spaces that are not necessarily on the ground. And so I think there's a lot of space. And as you can see by this example, a lot of plants are fine in this really kind of open and airy soil mix that you would put on a green roof. So I guess I just put this there to point out that I wouldn't go for heavy soils, but there are a lot of soil mixes that we can try, and a lot of latitude in what you can. Sorry about that. The next thing I needed to do, so now I had a pots and I had my soils and I knew basically what I was hoping to do. I needed to make my plant selections, and I think this is where I really nerded out a lot. I enjoy plants. I love prairies. I know diversity of prairies in Illinois vary based on the soil and the conditions and everything else. And I knew that really what I wanted to do was emulate some of the prairies of Illinois. And so the thing that I decided to do is I chose parts of the state that have plants that I love and that look sort of like what I might want to put in a pot. I also put conditions that I want that to be something dry, because pots dry out quickly. I want plants that can tolerate a little bit of dryness in case I forget to water them. I want places where plants have shallow soils already, so I knew they could handle being in a pot. I knew they could grow in this area. I knew they could handle the cold. And so I chose these areas, and then I looked through the plant list of what grows there. And then I started to narrow down the ones that I love from that area. And that became really my starting point. So I advocate this sort of approach for anything. If you want to grow natives, maybe identify an area or a community that really inspires you, and then go through that plant list and start there as a starting point for what you might want to try and not try. So 2009, I bought my plants. I stuck them in pots. I had a big, huge wish list of things that I wanted to try. As you can see, I had little plants that I stuck in spring. By the summer, they were taking off. And then by the fall, I had quite a full pot with a lot of great color and everything else. And so I felt good. I felt like, well, that was successful. I had a few that flowered in the first year. And so I was determined to keep going. The thing was that the winter was coming, and I knew that, there's a good chance that I could lose a lot of these plants. So I just left the pots out and prayed and hoped and did what I could to see what happens. And as you can see, by the next spring, a lot of things came back green and lush and fast. And so I quickly became to realize that this is going to work. I can try things out. Not everything worked, but some things did, and something worked really well. And so this started my journey of, I decided to write what did survive and what didn't. I sort of started to record what was working and what didn't work. I also started to realize that some plants were maybe a little too aggressive for me. And so maybe I wanted to try something a little bit different. And so that started me going through some things. And so here we are today. I've been doing this for 15 years. I have tried over 143 plants. I have 4 different soil mixes. The years have varied a lot. We've had some really huge winters with really cold winters that have resulted in a lot of death, and we've had some really hot summers that have also resulted in death. So you get good years and bad years, but some things have succeeded and it's been a great adventure. Before I get on to sort of do some laundry list of things that have worked and hasn't worked, I think the thing that I went in this doing plants because I love plants, and I got to grow many of the great plants that I love. But I immediately saw so many benefits. So being a green space in a very urban area, I become a beacon for many insects that are in the neighborhood. I am one of the greenest and most florally abundant things in the neighborhood. And so quickly insects and birds have found their way to mine. And so I have learned to love many wonderful bees. The diversity of bees that have come to my balcony has been incredible. As a scientist and a plant nerd, the diversity has been mind-blowing. And I've been told it's not surprising. Like, it's not that I'm providing the best habitat, but I'm providing something. And so if anyone's flying through, I'm a good pit stop on the way to better things. And so you can see the bee diversity. I do get honeybees, but I do get so many wonderful native bees that have come through my way. I also
Can I
get quite
ask you, Jeremie, can I ask you, how high up is your balcony? How many stories up are you?
I'm on the 3rd floor.
The 3rd
So I'm at tree line.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah, quite high up. I also have no one above me, so I'm very hot. Like, there's no shade, which, I think some days might be nice to have a little bit of shade to protect the plants. But yeah, I'm very exposed on the top up here. So, sorry, my dog just fucks everything.
We love dogs.
Good. I'm glad. He loves you too. So the other thing that I have noticed is I get occasional butterflies. I don't get a lot of butterflies. I think I get more bees than butterflies, but I do have a few butterflies that stop by, and a few crickets and cicadas and leaf bugs. And so, that's all wonderful. I will say this might not be as much fun for everyone else, but one thing I did get a lot of that really surprised me was so many native wasps. And I know many wasps scare people. But one thing I've learned after talking to wasp experts is most of the wasps I'm getting do not care about me at all. They are there for the flowers and they're there to eat the pollen and the nectar. And these are really some stunningly beautiful creatures. They're shiny, they're glossy, they're blue, they're strange colors. And so I gained a new fascination for wasp species that come through my way. And yeah, they're wonderful. And I sit out there while I'm, having my coffee and I watch these wasps just fly around me, totally ignoring me, not doing anything. And so, yeah, you get many visitors. I also get birds and squirrels, but they're less there to see my plants than I am. But cashew, stop. Okay, so now to get into the laundry list of plants, to give some people some ideas of what has worked and hasn't worked. I did want a tree in my backyard, so obviously I wasn't going to get a full tree. I was going to get something more short, shrubby trees. There are so many wonderful trees that could be used on balconies. I chose to do a serviceberry. I chose a serviceberry because it has beautiful flowers in the spring. It has beautiful berries, has beautiful fall color. That plant has been with me for the whole 15 years. It flowers and produces berries every year. The bees love it in the spring. The robins love fighting me for the berries every year. It's wonderful. I love it. I make jam from the berries. So it's my favorite. But I think there's many other options out there, and that could be tried. I obviously have only tried one because it worked, and I didn't need to try any others.
So how tall is your serviceberry?
It never gets bigger than 4 or 5 feet. I think because it's in a pot, it's sort of bonsai'd a little bit, and so it stayed small. Yeah, it's kind of in a bonsai situation, but it produced enough berries for a pie. So, that's great,
And how many years has it been in there?
15 years in that pot.
That's fantastic.
It's a 15-year-old tree. It's put up with a lot of winters, a lot of really cold winters, a lot of drought. So yeah, it's been a wonderful performer. I don't know if I've been lucky or if it is just a great tree to have in the backyard, but so it's been great. Okay, so here are some short lessons. There's a longer list that Lexi will probably make available to people that has all 140 and what I like or dislike about all of them. I put these in here because I call them the overachievers, not because, and I have not kept them, not because they're not great, but because they just do too well. These are plants that really perform great in pots. They come back every year. They have wonderful flowers. They look stunning. They just grow really big in pots. So if you just want a couple of flowers, you don't want to be a plant nerd and try and squeeze as many plants in a pot as possible, I highly recommend these guys. They're just good flowers. Pollinators love them. They're just really kind of do almost too well in pots. And so good for beginners, good for people who just want something pretty and not too finicky and messy to play with. These are my favorites. I put these in here because they, to me, behave. They produce wonderful flowers every year. They produce so many pollinators come to visit them. Their display is wonderful. Partridge pea is an annual, beautiful yellow flowers. The bees love it. It self-seeds by itself. I don't have to plant it, but it grows aggressively and shows up every year. I occasionally will have to thin it out so I don't have too many plants, but there's always plenty. Nodding onion is tough as nails. That thing has been here for 15 years. It grows every year. It tolerates a lot. Its flowers are pretty. It's a good green. It stays almost green all year round. Great performer. The bee balm, spotted bee balm, is also an annual, also shows up every year, also gives just a wonderful display of flowers every year. Phloxes, woodland phlox and sand phlox particularly are great. Prairie phlox is also wonderful. They're there early spring. They can be a little bit cold sensitive if there's a frost late in the season, but they have performed every year, good flowers. Don't always get pollinators because they often flower in the early spring. But as you saw in one of the photos, the butterflies love the phloxes as well. And then the aromatic aster is always there at the end. And it's just a great fall color. Other good performers that I just like, they're just fun. They're always there. They're always surviving. Anis hypsop is also a annual that shows up. It's not an annual in the garden, but in my pots, it's annual. Again, pollinators love it. Canadian anemone is beautiful. Just good yellow flowers in the spring. Fringe loosestrife was an interesting one. I didn't expect it, but it's another stunning, beautiful plant. And then Horia vervain, again, great pollinator. Harebell, just pretty in the spring. And Starry Campion is just a good performer and lots of beautiful flowers. With all that, I will advocate that all of these plantings, I have made sure that these are grasslands, and I do throw in a lot of great prairie grasses and sedges. I think they're more important than we realize in that they do provide a nice structure. So they always provide a nice green space. You know, it's always, my pots always look full and my flowers flower between them. I think also there may be a nurse plant effect going on. So a nurse plant is one which protects the plants around it. I do think the carrots particularly are good at staying green all year round. They sort of provide some insulation. So if there's little rosettes underneath, they're protected by the cold. This is something I would like to experimentally test, but it does seem plants near the calyxes and the grasses growing side by side do a little better than those on their own. Other things I just throw out there, like I said, a tree is worth trying. I would give it a go. Other things that you could try, prunus, rosebuds, dogwoods, all of them seem like good candidates for this. I've also tried ferns. Ferns don't, obviously don't attract pollinators, but they do pretty well. And I think many of us love ferns. The sensitive fern has been the best performer. Christmas fern is beautiful, but it's a little hit or miss as far as showing up. And then I have become the biggest fan of carex. There are 200 species native to the state of Illinois alone. I think there's so many out there that we could try. And they can be very beautiful in themselves, but also provide a great structure. Okay, so the big thing, I think, then the big question is, how do we overwinter? I think overwintering is the key, and I would love to be able to do more experimentation on how to overwinter plants. My list of plants that I've tried and what worked and hasn't worked, I think really just breaks down how long I was able to keep them going. And some I could keep for 15 years, some for 6, some for 2. And I really think the wintering and how successful they can winter is really the key. I'm still trying to learn what's best. Some people say I should keep the soil wet so that it stays frozen. Others say I should let it dry out. But I'm not too sure what's the best for that. And so I'm still playing with that. And as I mentioned, here I've got a photo of a little rosette stuck between some sedges. That rosette survived the winter. It was green all winter. And I think it is able to survive because the Carex just protected it, gave it a little insulation and that sort of thing. Again, I don't know if this is true. This is just some observations I've had. But I think, these are some things we need to work out. But I think once we work them out, we can really work out what really can survive outside overwinter year after year after year. So some of the take-homes, I did notice that there are some plants that do better than others. I find things with fibrous roots and rhizomatous roots really just have no problem. So the grasses, the asters, so the daisies and those sort of things seem to have the root system that really does well. Some of the things with tap roots like Baptisia, not so much. And so I think a big fat taproot may not handle the cold as well as something more fibrous. I do like self-seeders. There are a few plants that I have that act like annuals, and they do a great job. So the anise hyssop, the partridge pea, both of those are great, and the monarda, both act as annuals, but they work great. I do think creating some structure, so not just flowering plants, but some grasses is a good. And I've come to realize many more natives can handle container life than I expected, and the list is huge, and it's wonderful to see that there is so much. And I could only try a few. I think everyone should try some more, and the more we try, I'd love to create a list of what doesn't work and what does work. So the take home. You can make urban spaces more green. This is a picture of my balcony. As you can see, it's just crazy with green lushness. It's very soothing and wonderful. And yeah, and I would encourage everyone to give it a go and try it for themselves. I will continue to try. I'm a nerd. I keep trying things. Things die. I'll keep trying something new. I'll just keep doing it. And I'm just going to play. I mean, that's what gardening's all about. It's just playing. And hopefully I've encouraged you to also play in the garden. Just give it a go. You'll be surprised. I've listed some things that are winners to make you feel, get a good start and get some winners in the mix. But I also would encourage you to try some of your other favorite plants, and we can see where it goes from there. If anyone has any other questions, here's a link to one blog that I've written. There are others, but I'm happy if people want to reach out. I will say I may not answer emails quickly, but I will answer emails in the end. So if you have any more insights or you're interested, but I think Lexi will give you a short list of what I do have. If she can't, I can happily help of what I have tried and haven't tried. Yeah, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank Moraine for giving me the chance to do this. And yeah. Hope
Jeremie, we have a question on the chat. So with attracting all these pollinators, some people don't like the wasps, but this viewer doesn't like flies. And she's noticed that they come and visit her plants a lot. So any tips on discouraging certain pollinator visitors like flies?
Yeah, it comes down to plant choice. There are some plants that flies like. They love daisies. They love open flowers. They haven't got a tongue that can reach into flowers that are deep. So anything that opens up as a sort of a flat receptacle, they will come to. So you can go. There is ways. I have a colleague who studies pollinator gardens and what you can use to encourage some versus others. But it comes down to plant choice, really. There are some plants that definitely flies do not like, just because they can't get the pollen. So
would you recommend that she plant tubular flowers then?
things with tubes and columns, that sort of thing. Sorry, my dog, it doesn't normally bark, but yeah, there's definitely a list of flowers that we could, like phloxes. Flies don't really like phloxes because they've got big tubes, all the nectar's in the tube. But yeah, I don't have a list off the top of my head, but I know my colleague Nick Dorian at the Chicago Botanic Gardens, he does have some lists that he's created of plants that favor some groups over others. Like my spotted bee balm, definitely wasps love that. Even though I think it's beautiful and wonderful, if you really, really are too scared of wasps, although I do encourage you, these wasps do not sting or attack. But if you don't want them, then I wouldn't encourage spotted bee balm, for example.
Got it. We got a couple more questions. Hello from Orland Park. Hello, Southwest suburbs. We live tree line, third floor balcony too. How big was your pot to hold your serviceberry tree?
The serviceberry tree is a round pot that's around 2 feet in diameter. And it's
2 feet in diameter. So that's like a 25 gallon.
Oh, I don't know how many gallons that is.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is a tricky one. I always get there's like a number for the pot. Um,
I could work it out, but it's like 2 feet deep, 2 feet diameter. It's a big round guy. So it is big, but
have you
kind of
ever
like a
tried
whiskey
anything?
barrel,
Yeah, I
kind
was
of like
gonna
a
say
whiskey
whiskey
barrel
barrel.
size.
Yeah.
smaller than a whiskey. Yeah, okay. A little bit smaller whiskey barrel, but close. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and any tips for deep flower boxes?
Deep flower boxes. Yeah, as I said, the plant, I was shocked how many plants survive on the green roof in Chicago Botanic Gardens. The depth of that is only 4 to 8 inches at most. And so
Wow.
there are so many, there was big blue growing in 8 inches of soil.
Wow.
So yeah, I was obsessed with root depth. I was told the prairie roots go 12 feet down, but plants can handle a lot. So just as I was naive and thought I could get things aside the winter, some colleagues at work demonstrated that even deep-rooted plants can survive in shallow pots. So I think give it a go. You'll be surprised. I think a lot of plants will be able to tolerate the depth. It's just watering becomes an issue, right? I think my laziness in watering, I rather deep pots because it holds water more. If it's shallower, you're going to have to water more frequently.
So basically, your takeaway is if it doesn't have a long taproot, give it a try.
Yeah, I think so. I think you'll be surprised. Yeah.
And one more question about that. How large of a pot is needed for the grasses and sedges?
Oh, not deep at all. I started with deep pots, so everything's around somewhere between 18 inches and 2 feet deep, all my pots. But yeah, on the green roof, 4 inches. Especially if you choose dry. I chose June grass, which grows in sand, and Bouteloua, which grows in dry areas. So they don't need deep soils at all. So yeah, you don't need a deep pot for grasses for sure.
Now,
Awesome.
I
Well,
have one question that I want to ask you. This is just kind of, well, not a trick question, and I'm sure this changes by the season or by the year. But at this point in time, if you had to pick one favorite native plant, what would it be?
It'd be the sand phlox. It comes out at that time of year where the winter has just been long. It's the first thing to flower. It's there like in late April, early May, if you're lucky, if it's warm enough. And it's just full of color. It's so much color in a very small space. So yeah, the phloxes definitely win just because they come at that time when you really need something flowering, I think.
Would you recommend like so would you recommend with these plants like putting them like making like you've done like a prairie within a pot? Or do you sometimes like have you also done pots where you just did all one species in the pot because it's not a real competitive plant?
I've never done, and mine have always been mixed. my colleagues and I have talked about this as far as recommendations. We do think in all the best way to, the problem with one plant is that it looks great for a period and then it looks a little bit boring after a while. So we're always advocating for 3 or 4 things per pot that grow well together. And so I think, for the average gardener or home gardener, choosing 4 of your favorite plants, maybe a couple of grasses and a couple of daisies would be a good way to go, personally.
This is exciting. See, everybody, doesn't matter where you live, you can have these native plants.
Absolutely.
Nobody has an excuse.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. So is that it with the questions right
Yep,
now,
we're through our
Lexi?
questions. Yep.
But keep asking as you watch it, as you watch this, everybody. We read them all. And thank you so much, Jeremie. This was awesome. This was just what we needed.
Excellent. I'm glad I was useful. Glad people love the things that I love too, so it's kind of awesome.
We're all plant nerds.
Exactly. 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 So
thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you in our next presentation.